Okay, in this video we're going to be looking at how globalisation has impacted upon our labour markets and our living standards and potentially the environment as well. So first of all, the main impact that it's had on our labour markets is there's been a dramatic change to a more deregulated labour market. So the idea is that we're switching towards more enterprise bargaining and productivity-based enterprise agreements because we want to be as productive and as internationally competitive as possible. So we've gotten rid of things like union membership and unfair dismissal laws, and we're scaling back on minimum wages with the idea to make our economy more productive and more efficient so that we can compete with other countries. Businesses are also opting for more part-time and casual workers. So with casual workers, they can cost a little bit more in terms of per hour pay, but the idea is that they give businesses more flexibility. So if they do have a lack of sales, they don't have to have people in the books that they're paying on a daily basis, and that can help to reduce their costs of production. So they're looking for a more flexible labour market with the use of more casual and part-time workers. The idea is in the long term, these reforms are designed to make us more efficient. So the idea is that by deregulating our labour market, by encouraging people to be as productive as they possibly can, that will lead to increased efficiency, and that will lead to increased exporting and increased international competitiveness, with the overall idea to boost our GDP and boost our total level of production. That's what these labour market reforms are all about, trying to increase efficiency, trying to increase our competitiveness, and therefore boost our long-term output and real GDP. From a negative point of view, the negatives have really been that a lot of jobs have been outsourced. So what I mean by outsourcing is that we're not saying the whole company moves overseas, but we're saying that the company might have certain services provided overseas. So, for example, a big business might outsource their call centres or something like that to try and reduce their cost of production because there's cheaper wages overseas. So it's led to outsourcing where certain services have been outsourced to overseas. It's also led to offshoring, which basically means the whole company moves overseas. So Bloodstone, for example, the shoe company or the boots company, has moved their whole operations offshore. That's what offshoring means. You no longer operate in Australia, you operate overseas. And obviously the big weakness with that is that all the people that worked in Australia in those companies then lose their jobs and are left structurally unemployed. There's been many victims. A lot of companies have gone overseas, like Arnott's and Heinz, Pacific Brands, so the makers of bonds, Telstra, Qantas. A lot of these industries have been involved in offshoring and outsourcing a lot of their operations. So in terms of the main negative is that workers in competitive, efficient firms with higher sales and profits have reaped the rewards, while those in low-skilled and inefficient industries have suffered and have become structurally unemployed because of the lack of protection. So I talked about the other day in class with Donald Trump. Part of his election campaign was about trying to reduce globalisation and keep tight barriers to trade from China, from Mexico, to try and reduce this level of structural unemployment in their manufacturing sector. But that's the big weakness on the labour market. So positives got to be aware of, and some of the negatives for our labour market from these reforms. In terms of overall living standards, globalisation has helped. Apologies for that. Globalisation has helped Australia. It's boosted our production at a faster rate, and that's because we have specialised in areas of comparative advantage. So overall, our economy has grown at a much faster rate. The government has been able to generate increased taxation revenue and therefore use that money to provide welfare and community services. So despite the fact there's been structural unemployment in some industries in the short term, overall our living standards have improved, overall prices have gone down and incomes per capita have increased. But it has led to increased inequity because of the fact that there has been job losses in a lot of industries. Other things, that the surge of e-commerce and reduced tariffs have given people more choice. So not only are we getting access to cheaper prices, not only is our income per capita increasing, but we're also getting access to a greater wide range of goods and services. But another negative is that because globalisation has encouraged foreign investment, house prices have increased. So while incomes have increased, while goods are generally cheaper, housing has been one negative in the sense that it's caused higher house prices. Although that's been really good for people that already have houses because they're generating an increase in their wealth. So it's a positive and a negative in terms of higher house prices. Lastly, in terms of the environment, a couple of good things that there is a lot of pressure on multinational companies to be environmentally friendly. They their shareholders can often request them to be environmentally friendly, and that can help to improve the environmental outcomes. There's also prosecution for multinational companies if they don't follow environmental laws. But having said that, the increased international specialisation, the increased movement of goods and services across borders has led to a lot more carbon emissions. So the more and more goods and services that are getting transported in and out of Australia, I'm sure you all went on that excursion to the Port of Melbourne in Year 9. You would have seen the volume of goods and services transported in and out of Australia, and that all leads to carbon emissions. More production of goods and services can also cause environmental damage. And because Australia does specialise in agriculture and mining and things like that, that can also lead to problems in terms of having to use more fertiliser, digging up natural resources, hurting our non-renewable resources. So that's the impact that it can have on the labour market, our overall living standards and the environment.